We are here. I'm here. You're here. Welcome to the world of perfume. This is Perfume Around the World. Today is part two. We're going to France. Vive la France. How are you guys today? It's wonderful to see you. Thank you so much for being here. How are you? Are you excited? I am so excited to be here with you. And, you know, France is one of my favorite countries in the world. I've spent quite a bit of time in Paris and not as much in the other parts of France. But I've been very lucky to spend some time in that beautiful country, and I know a lot of you have too. So I'm excited to hear your stories of France. And I have to tell you, when I was in France in the French perfume boutiques, it was all I could do. I mean, I literally had to pull myself out of there. And what's interesting is the people who work in Paris in the perfumeries and the French perfume shops really know the history of French perfume. They are very well versed in the art of French perfume and the history of French perfume. It's not like here in the US when sometimes you go into a place that sells perfume and they know very little. You know, they know about their products, but they don't really know about much else. The French perfume shop folks really have this deep and steeped sense of tradition. They go through extensive training in France and in Paris in particular to be able to sell perfume. So these are people for whom it's really their expertise, and it's so fun to go and talk to them. So way, as the case may be. Today we go to Paris. So I want to welcome you in. Is anybody new to Perfume Around the World? Did not come to session one, for example. I'm not going to recap session one because you can always go back and watch, but I will be sort of reminding you of some of the main concepts. And I'm so excited to take you to France today. We can't go to France right now because our world's in a state, but we can go together and learn all about the perfumes. Isn't that fun? You visited the Fragonard Perfume Factory. Fragonard's factory, Molinard's factory in Grasse. If you ever go to France and have time to spend time in France outside of Paris, these are bucket list places to go, and you can actually blend your own perfume in those factories and take it home with you, which is really exciting. Kilo K says, spent hours in the Paris Museum of Perfume. Isn't it incredible? I mean, and so don't worry if you don't know anything about the history of French perfuming. I'm gonna walk you through. I made my own timeline to share with you today. That'll be in your notes, and so just enjoy this experience with me today, and I'm going to walk you through it. I am a collector of French perfumes, and in fact, I have an original bottle from House Caron, who's going to be in our timeline of perfumes that I'm sharing with you. So I have a little surprise for you. I'm going to tell you about that, and then I'll remind you about that at the end of our time together today. So this perfume bottle is original to House Caron, and I will explain the rise of House Caron, which is one of the most important French perfumers in the history of French perfume. And this is a beautiful bottle. This is their what they call their signature bottle that they created. So this is exactly what people would have had on their vanities from House Caron at the time. Isn't that incredible? So this is an enter to win for you. I was really thinking what would be a fun kind of surprise for you today, because I know a lot of you are interested in perfumes and you're also adding perfumes to your collections. So if you shop at sagegoddess.com before Sunday, not only are you going to enter to win this bottle filled with a perfume that I will make for you based on, you can either tell me a theme or you can tell me exactly the notes that you want. It probably doesn't surprise you that I have in my own collection pretty much every essential oil and absolute that is available on the market. I work with private distilleries, so if I don't have something, they can find it. I don't make custom perfumes anymore, so this is a real treat. The bottle itself is worth $150. It is a vintage original Caron perfume, and then, you know, whatever a custom perfume from me is worth. So this is a pretty exciting thing. You have to say France in your notes when you order at sagegoddess.com, and you can order today, tomorrow, Saturday, or Sunday. I'm going to choose and announce the winner of the blend on Monday, and then I will put that on the event page. Isn't that exciting? So you can say, you know what, Athena, I want you to make me the ultimate love perfume. Or I want you to make me the ultimate French perfume with only ingredients from France. Or you can say, I want orris, patchouli, neroli, bergamot, you know, whatever. I mean, you could frankincense and spikenard. You can give me the exact, and you can give me the proportions you want. Or you can say, make me something biblical, or make me something, just, you know, take my name and let it inspire you, and I'll come up with something chosen for your name. And then I will write down the recipe and give that to you as well. So if you ever want it remade by me or someone else, you can do that. So Caron, House Caron, is the perfume house that this bottle came from. Isn't that fun? In addition to that, we gave our Soulship students and our Crystal Master students 21% off this week in a special little sale. So in addition to that, the code is 21LOVE. So right now the public gets 18% off at sagegoddess.com. Starting right now, you'll have 21% off. And I don't know if you saw anywhere else, but I am doing a giveaway of an entire fall altar, the centerpiece of which is I believe it's 14-pound orange labradorite sphere. It's from my house. It's literally this big. And you get the whole altar. You get, I mean, it's I don't know if you saw the picture, but it's everything, right? So 21% off, plus you can enter to win this, plus you'll be entered to win the ultimate fall altar giveaway, and you have until the midnight on Sunday to shop. This is pretty exciting. So that's your code. You can still enter to win the grand prize, the fall altar, which, like I said, I've never really seen an orange labradorite sphere that big, and I've gotten around in my days. So enjoy. The number one thing I'm going to recommend that you choose from sagegoddess.com, I only have like 40 bottles left of it. If you did not already get Saint Germain perfume, this is made with pure orris root. It is heavenly. I don't want to spray too much because I want to keep my nose clear for the perfume that we're making today, but that is orris and violet, which are the two oils associated with Saint Germain, who's an ascended master that gifted us the violet ray of blessing and protection. I recommend getting that because we don't have any more of the bottles. We're not bringing Saint Germain perfume back. It's a limited edition. But if you've fallen in love with orris, you might really want Saint Germain, and I would, highly recommend using your discount code to get that one if you haven't gotten it already. Because the bottle is so gorgeous. So the code is 21LOVE, and that's Saint Germain. That's a glass bottle. It looks like something you'd find in a French perfume house. This was a very expensive one to make. The bottle was expensive to design, and the oils are expensive. That's why we're not bringing it back. But it's super pretty, and I've been using it all the time because I work with the violet ray, which is both for blessing and for protection. So, yeah, enjoy your 21% off, and enjoy entering to win that custom perfume. Your chances are really good because this is not a public giveaway. This is just for people who are in Perfume Around the World. So I thought you would really be excited about that. Don't you love it? It's so special. I'm glad you guys are enjoying it too. Brandy loves it. Kathleen likes it. Lena just got it. Catherine Schmidt likes it. Very, very good. I'm glad to hear that. Okay, so on with the show. I have so much to tell you today, so much to show you. I'm really excited. And there will be time for questions and answers, and I love your questions and answers. You know, perfuming is one of my favorite subjects to talk about. Perfume, essential oils, and crystals are kind of my two favorite things in the whole world. If I had any choice of how to spend my time, 99% of the time, it's either with oils or it's with stones. I think they're complementary modalities, and I know a lot of you do too, because a lot of you are crystal healers, which you work with oils in your practice, which I highly recommend. And you probably see me live sometimes. I think it was a couple days ago, 2 days ago, I was live and somebody was asking, what stone would you work with for, was it congestion or something like that? And I said, at some point you gotta switch from crystals to oils, because for some challenges, your essential oils and your absolutes and your resins are more helpful medicines. Now, one of the things I'm going to talk to you about today is the concept of a fine synthetic perfume. In your kit today, and in your kit for all of the countries, you only have natural essential oils. But when you go to France, one of the things you're going to learn is that the French really do rely on what they call fine synthetic is how they say it in French, synthetique oils and materials. And so one of the things I want to teach you today, when I have customers come to me and say, oh, are the oils in that perfume all natural? Most of the time, most of the perfumes that I make for Sage Goddess, I would say at least 75% of the time, they are entirely pure. Now, one of the things we have to do legally on our website is we have to say that there could be synthetic ingredients in the perfumes, and that's a legal disclaimer that we have to put. So when you buy a perfume at Sage Goddess, you'll notice there's a little thing at the bottom that says, this perfume could contain natural or synthetic oils. Have you noticed that? But most of the time they do not. Most of the time they're pure. In fact, at Sage Goddess, I spend as much money on oils as I do on crystals, essential oils and absolutes for our company, which may or may not surprise you because we offer a lot of crystals, but essential oils and absolutes are very expensive, and we work with private distilleries. And the price of oils has gone up anywhere from 40 to 80% since June of 2020 because most of the distilleries shut down due to COVID. Some have not reopened. There was a major distillery coming out of Southeast Asia that had to close because of the pandemic and is permanently closed, which cut off my access to about 60 to 80 different oils that I would have had access to had they stayed open. So that was a real bummer. We had another time that happened sort of more toward the early years of Sage Goddess where a distillery shut down and I wasn't able to make some perfumes that were kind of iconic to the work that I do. So we really are dependent upon distilleries, and COVID hit the distilleries very hard. So I'm going to be giving you some additional information about all of this today because I think it's really important for us to spread the word and raise awareness. One of my friends is a really talented artisan perfumer, and he's been crafting perfumes and making perfumes for decades. And one of the things that, the way he describes it, I wrote down what he said because I think you should hear it. Yeah, your perfumes are going to be more expensive. Sage Goddess perfumes will go up by a couple of dollars. I haven't done it yet just because I haven't, I don't like to raise prices. My team would tell you I drive them absolutely insane. I always want to give you things at the lowest possible price that we can. But we're going to have to raise our prices just a little bit across the board because the mines were shut down last year. The distilleries were shut down last year. 2 of my carvers died from COVID this last year. So a lot of our own costs have gone up, but it's not just Sage Goddess. I'm sure you realize this, right? That the cost of food is going up, the cost of everything is going up. So it's not just going to be oils and stones. It's going to be pretty much the cost of everything that you buy until the situation sort of rights itself. Magica Rosa, I don't know because I'm having trouble getting that rose attar. Or attar, people pronounce it differently. I'm having trouble getting the main rose attar that's in Magica Rosa, and that's the smell that you really smell when you open that bottle. We're going to try to remake Amatus perfume, which has an oil where the distillery closed, and we tried to replicate it, and I just said no to all of our efforts because I was just like, no matter what I'm blending, it doesn't smell like Amatus because the distillery closed, and I can't get the particular. It's not just a rose. It's not just an orange blossom. You know what I mean? Like sometimes they smell different, and if you don't get it from that region and that country and that distillery, the whole blend smells different. You know what I mean? And so I'm super picky. My nose is pretty good. In the early days of Sage Goddess, I didn't measure anything, which probably doesn't surprise you. And then I would remake it and just do my best to make it match. But we realized over the years is customers don't like that. They want everything to be exact and precise. So now we measure to the milliliter. of the oils in our different blends so that every batch that you get is consistent. I don't really enjoy that because it sort of constrains me a little bit, but it helps us to be more consistent when we're making secondary and tertiary blends of original formulations. So Amatus is officially retired forever. Soulmates is officially retired forever. Bliss, after this last batch is gone, is officially retired forever. There are certain oils that I just won't be able to make anymore. But you know what that means? It means that the bottles that you have are really special and you should hold on to them and really enjoy them. Nothing lasts forever. You know what I mean? So it also teaches us to really appreciate. I have two almost full bottles of Amatus because it's my favorite love perfume in my vanity, and I use it very sparingly, knowing that even I can't make any more. I don't have any of the oils even here at home to remake it. So anyway, I don't know if all of this banter is interesting to you, but these are the things, because I think about perfuming all the time and I think about distilling all the time. And so here's how my friend put it. He said, the best parfum in the world, you ready for this, should have a body of fine natural oils, meaning essential oils and absolutes, hung upon a skeleton of fine synthetic. So he wants a skeleton of fine synthetic oils, and upon that you build a body of the highest quality natural oils. So in that way, it's a hybrid, right, is what he's saying, that you want to take your fine synthetics and blend them with something that is a fine natural, and that the union of those two is what creates the best parfum. Now, this is how Fragonard, Molinard, Gallinard, in fact, House, and I'm going to teach you about all of this today, so if you're like, what's Fragonard, Molinard, Gallinard, I'll get there. Fragonard, actually, they wrote these essays. I have them in these original bound books that they released. And one of the things that's really interesting about what Fragonard said is that they did a study, okay? I may have mentioned this to you in the past. When I first read it, I thought it was so interesting. They did a study in Paris of customers, and they laid out a combination of natural and synthetic of things you would recognize, okay? So like patchouli, rose, myrrh, what else did they do? Bergamot. I remember there was like 6 or 8. Let me shut my ringer off. I had my ringer on because my kids just started school after a year and a half, and they're out of school now. So yeah, and the answer is yes, Stephanie. So here's what's interesting. They invited their best customers and even some of their employees to do this sniff test, okay? Here's the synthetic, here's the real. They didn't tell them which is which one do you like better? Do you know it was 100% synthetic for every single one? And they said the reason is some notes like rose, pure rose, can actually smell quite sour. But the rose that people have come to know from department store perfumes and from being in their garden when the flowers are at the height of their bloom is quite sweet. And so 100% of the people who smelled these synthetic versus real chose the synthetic and said it smelled more natural. And the perfumers were like, you know what I mean? For them, it kind of validated. Now, one of the things that's interesting is a lot of people feel like, well, synthetic notes are not vibrational. But what I will tell you is, having worked with synthetics, and I'm not talking about, let me say this, there are good synthetics, what they call fine synthetics, which by the way are more expensive than natural ingredients. So when someone uses sometimes a synthetic ingredient, don't take that to mean that they're cutting costs, okay? When I buy a fine synthetic, it's usually more expensive than the natural oil. So it's not a cost-cutting measure. It's to get to the truest form of that note, okay? Now again, I prefer natural when I can get it. Usually if I use a synthetic, it's because it's something I can't get, okay? So when a Sage Goddess perfume says it has rose in it, it's got real rose. When a Sage Goddess perfume says it has patchouli in it, it's got patchouli in it. When a Sage Goddess perfume says it has frankincense in it, it has frankincense in it. My customers now are attuned to how those actually smell, and they don't expect a department store rose from a natural rose, because there is kind of a difference. Do you know what I mean? However, when there's something that I want to work with that I can't get in a natural form, like peony, okay? There's no natural peony essential oil or absolute. One of the reasons is if you tried to distill peony, it would not smell anything like the flower. It actually smells very sour and quite bitter and a little sharp. It doesn't smell upon distillation or maceration. It doesn't smell the way the peonies do when you go and get them from Trader Joe's, okay? So synthetics are chemical based, okay? And there's a whole, you can actually go and become trained in the archive, in the absolute library of chemicals that go into making synthetic perfumes. And it is, if you've ever seen chemical sort of composition equations, it's actually a very complex formulation of the molecules. And so some people call it molecular perfuming when we start talking about synthetic perfuming. And you can actually, some perfumers will actually lay out the molecular structure of their perfume so that you can see the molecule chain and how the molecules bind to each other. Don't worry, that's not what this class is. I'm not here to teach you about molecular binding, but I just want you to know that it is often referred to as molecular perfuming because you're basically breaking down these chemicals into their molecular structures and then recombining those molecules to create something new. This process is called making an accord. Have you heard of accords? ACCORDS. You'll often see vetiver accord or oud accord or amber accord. I took a class, it was a very expensive class, on accord building. And it was very fun, it was very challenging. So what we did is the teacher would say to us, your next assignment is to build an amber accord, and then sent us off to go and put different fine synthetics, different molecules together to create our own amber accord. And it was really stressful because you can get an amber accord by blending 3 or 4 molecules, but there are hundreds that you can choose from. So my amber might smell more animalistic, to use a perfuming term, or yours might smell a little bit sweeter or a little bit rounder. Mine might smell sharper or more, and so the teacher had to decide whose amber accords were good and whose were not quite good enough, and you didn't use enough molecules or used too many molecules. So you can imagine this gets very technical and very challenging, right? So yeah, so Space Daisy said something very interesting, right? Would synthetic be vibrational in that it still hits your olfactory nerves and brain centers? It depends on what we mean by vibrational. So we've established that synthetics give you more freedom because there are thousands of possibilities with synthetics versus you're confined to a more narrow list of oils when you're making pure essential oil and absolute based perfumes. Okay, so you have a wider library of scents to work with, so when you're building an accord, there are literally hundreds of molecules you could be combining as opposed to maybe 10 different essential oils that have some kind of amber vibration to them, right? I think what people mean by vibrational, what I've taken away anyway, is they mean that they want the actual energy of the living flower to still be alive in the distillation of the oil. So they want to know that what they're working with on their body came from the original flower. And I do understand that. And so for those people, it's not about the smell, it's not even about the name or the concept or anything as much as it's about, did this come from a living flower or did this come from a laboratory or these molecules that are combined together? There are very few department store perfumes that have any natural ingredients in them at all. Joe Malone is hybrid. They're one of the few that does work with some essential oils, and then the rest of it is molecular based on fine synthetics. Diptyque is another hybrid model coming out of Paris, where they work with a hybrid of fine synthetics and natural oils. Yeah, kind of like a flower essence. I think that's probably a really good parallel to describe, right? So yeah, so for example, I work with frangipani and lotus absolutes at Sage Goddess. When you buy rainbow lotus, that actually is a maceration. It's a distillation of blue lotus, white lotus, and pink lotus, and that's all natural. It's not really super sweet. You know, so some people are like, oh, lotus, I expected it to be really sweet. And it's like, yeah, if I made a fine synthetic for you, it would, or an accord, if I made a lotus accord, but this is the natural oil. We also had for a long time natural frangipani, natural plumeria. The other challenge is when you get into some of these frangipani, lotus, gardenia, it's another one that's really expensive for me to get, honeysuckle, really expensive. You start getting into the price range of about $500 to $2,000 for 8 to 16 ounces. And it can go higher than that. You can start getting into $3,000 and $4,000 per kilogram, which is 2.2 pounds, which is just over 16 ounces of oils. In some cases, I'm willing to make that sacrifice, right? Because I think that it's really cool to have natural blue lotus, and it's extremely expensive, but I'm able to get it, and it's worth it, you know. Plumeria Absolute is beautiful, and it costs me an arm and a leg. It doesn't smell as good as the fine synthetics. A lot of people go, well, that doesn't smell like the plumeria when I get off the plane in Hawaii, and it's like, well, because once again, to the point of the parfumers at Fragonard, if you want it to smell like that, then you need to work with the flowers and not with the absolute, right? Which is really the sort of the residue of the flower. It has the energy of it, but it's not going to have that exact smell, right? So I hope this is interesting to you, and I hope it's helpful for you. Stephanie's asking if I've ever thought of getting into distilling. It's not interesting to me, and the reason is it's very difficult. It's a lot of machinery. It's a lot of processing, and it's better to have a distillery in the country of origin of the oils themselves. And it just feels like too much for me to manage, you know, kind of given how my life is. I can imagine myself upon retirement wanting to, you know, move to Gross and open my own little private lavender distillery or something like that. But there are people who that's their expertise. I'd rather leave it to the experts and have them do it than, you know, something like that. The other thing is, for me, I have to say, I think it's great that we have companies like doTERRA or Young Living. I prefer Young Living to doTERRA personally, just based on my own experiences, but they're both very well-known companies. They work more with medicinal blends, right? So again, those two companies are not concerned with how does this smell. Those two companies are concerned with, if you have shoulder pain, this blend is going to have all of the pain relieving essential oils associated with something that's going to help you. They're not there to they're not doing what the French have done, which is the French perfume goal is to create something that is beautiful to smell and to wear. If it has healing properties, that's secondary to the intention of bringing you something beautiful. Today, medicinal perfumery, if you want to call it that, in the form of what those companies are doing, is really designed to create medicines for you. And if they happen to smell good, that's the secondary benefit. But the primary benefit is medicinal. What I've tried to do at Sage Goddess over these last 10 years is stand somewhere in the middle of that. My goal is to give you something really beautiful, that smells beautiful, that also has healing properties to it. I have tried to stand in the middle of those two and offer you kind of the best of both worlds, and that's my goal. So a lot of you are trained more in the medicinal, whereas this class hopefully is interesting to you because this class is not about the medicinal, right? And I think those companies do a really nice job of training their folks in the medicinal, and I think that's really good. My goal is to train you on the scent aspect of perfume, and then from there you can say, okay, so I want to make something that's beautiful but also has these particular medicinal properties. So like everything else, I try to stand somewhere in the middle, because I will tell you something, and this is just me, I like it better when it smells better. I really do. And I think there's lots of different ways to achieve that. And what I've also learned too in my journey anyway is that you can there are ways to sweeten something that's very medicinal without undermining or compromising the medicinal qualities of those oils. So yeah, so today we're going to talk a lot about perfume design. Are there oil companies that sell essential oils for the fragrance? I don't know. I can't really think. I mean, Eden Botanicals, to a certain extent, does that. Although I would say they're still erring on, they don't really do blends, right? So I'm trying to think of companies that do blends, where the focus is on the fragrance and not on the medicine side, right? I do remember Aromatherapy, and I think Aromatherapy was beautiful. There's also a company out of the UK, but it's synthetic, that I really love called Aura. Oh, I'm trying to remember. It'll come to me. It's not Auricacia. It'll come to me. But they're all synthetic, but I love them. And what's funny is, you know, this company out of the UK, I know it's synthetic, what they do. They use fine synthetics. That is where, other than my own material, that's where I go when I need a vibrational adjustment. I go to their blends. So I'm one of those people who feels like a fine synthetic with the right intention is vibrational. Does that make sense? But I also think it's totally okay for someone to say, I don't want anything that isn't, you know, isn't from nature herself. Although you have to remember that the flowers themselves are molecular, right? Every essential oil has a molecular structure. So you don't really get away from the molecular nature of perfume, right? But yeah, if you don't like the smell, then yeah. Okay, I'm glad this is helpful. So let me back up. I'm going to show you what we're working with today. We are making an alcohol-based perfume today. This is your bottle. We custom designed this bottle. It came from France, and I have to tell you, having been to all of the French perfume houses, this is exactly the bottle you would see if you were in Paris. They are all cut crystal like this. They're all really thick on the bottom, heavy like this. So I tried to give you something that was very authentic French. And so you have your perfumer's alcohol, which is a denatured alcohol called ethanol, and that's what we're going to be working with today. And then the oils we're working with today are Orris root. These are all from France. We're working with neroli, and we are working with lavender. Now, yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned Claire Alliance is the gift of clear scent. Claire Gustance is the spiritual gift of clear taste. Some people, myself included, can smell a spirit. Spirits sometimes come to me not by saying anything or moving anything or turning lights on and off, but rooms will smell like something when I haven't left the room, I haven't sprayed anything, I haven't even opened the door, and all of a sudden the whole room will smell like balsam fir, or the whole room will smell like rose, or the whole room will smell like spikenard. It doesn't happen to me very often. It usually happens about once or twice a year. It happens to me most often when someone I know has passed away. Yeah, so that is a very important spiritual gift. And a lot of people don't know it's a spiritual gift. They'll come to me and go, oh my God, I've been smelling things and I know nobody's there and I know nobody's sprayed anything. And all of a sudden I smell this thing and I'm like, it's a soul gift. Just like clairaudience and clairvoyance and clairsentience, clairalliance, which is this ability to smell the spirit world, is a very, very impressive gift. It's not one that many people have, and it is a clear gift. Yeah, it's amazing when it happens, right? When my grandmother died, it happened twice to me and my mom. One time we were together, and it was the middle of the night, and my mom was crocheting and I was reading. I'll never forget. I've probably, if you've been with me for the whole 10 years, you've heard the story at some point. And my grandmother had been gone for, she died in 1998, so you have to remember this is like almost 25 years ago now. She'd been gone for maybe a month, maybe not even, maybe a couple of weeks. And my mom and I were up in the middle of the night, and she's doing her thing and I'm doing my thing. And all of a sudden, the whole room fills up with my grandmother's scent, which was gardenia. That was her favorite. And I will never forget, it was so strong, you guys. And I looked up from my book and I looked over at my mom, and she looked up from her crocheting and she looked at me. And we both said, she's here. She's here. I mean, what else are you going to say? The whole room smelled like her. And neither of us had moved, right? And nobody else was awake. And then as soon as we both recognized it, it was gone. Like it had not happened. So spirit can use scent too. And one of the things that's really cool, like even with the oils that we're working with today, lavender and orris and neroli, lavender and neroli in particular, these are oils that are as old as time. And even though I'm telling you they're from France, I'm going to talk a little bit about Egypt today because the Egyptians used lavender before the French did. It probably doesn't surprise you. And neroli really originated in Italy and then was brought to France from Italy when Caterina de' Medici married Henri II. In 1533. This was a pivotal moment, and so I guess we'll dive right into the timeline now. Are you ready? When Caterina de' Medici, who was Italian, married Henri de France, right, the second, Henri of France in 1533, that was the birth of perfuming in France. We can trace the entire history of perfume in the West, really, to that marriage of Italy and France through that arrangement of Catherine of Medici to Henry II. And so their wedding was this really grand occasion. And the origin story of French perfume is not that sexy. I mean, some of you may already know it, but to me, it's fascinating. When I first learned of these stories, which was, I was 17 years old when I was introduced to aromatherapy. My mom is an esthetician. And at the time, she was training at the Dermalogica Institute here in Los Angeles. And she invited me to go for this. She was getting her, you get your annual continuing education units. So she was getting her CEUs in aromatherapy, and she said, you're so obsessed, because I collected perfume bottles as a little girl, and my mom was obsessed with antique stores. So we would go into these antique stores, and there's a lot of them here in Los Angeles and Orange County where I live. So I would always go with my mom antiquing, and I would get into these conversations with these vendors who were selling antique and vintage perfume bottles. And they would tell me all the stories of all of these things, right? And I'm glad you like this lavender, by the way. This is Provence lavender, which in my opinion is the finest lavender in the world. You can get lavender from Bulgaria. I don't love it. Okay, it's a little sharp. My favorite perfume in lavender in the whole world is Lavender Absolute, which is really the deepest, darkest press of lavender. But some people don't like it, and I wanted to give you true lavender to work with. So this is considered the second press of lavender from Provence. So anyway, what I was going to tell you is that I was 17 when I really was exposed to formal training through my mom's CEU program that she was enrolled in at the time. And they let me go through the program and get my little certificate too. And I was hooked. And they walked us through some of this. But again, their focus was on the medicinal side of aromatherapy. So they were more concerned with the combinations of essential oils, and they were focused on the skin. So what's good for cystic acne, or versus anti-aging, right? There's certain oils that are the best for aging and anti-aging, and then what carrier oils should you suspend your essential oils in to promote the turnover of cells, right? So I have odd knowledge of all of those things because of that work. And if you have questions about that at the end of class tonight, we can certainly talk about aging and all those things. Lavender is very good for an anti-aging blend. It's not the best. There are others that are better. And I really encourage you to make your own anti-aging blends, especially if you have access to really good ingredients. Absolute is not always the deepest, darkest press. In the case of lavender, it is. Lavender Absolute is almost black. It's so dark. It's like a dark green black. Absolute is actually a process for how to distill flowers where the petals are cannot be distilled through traditional means. So it's a different distillation process. I'm so glad it's opened up your heart chakra to talk about all this. Yeah, the best for anti-aging, of course, is going to be your rosehip seed oil, helichrysum, violet leaf. Rose essential oil is very important for anti-aging. What else do I love for anti-aging? Frankincense is very important for cellular turnover. So there's a lot of those ingredients are going to be the best ones for you to use for anti-aging. So we'll talk more about that later if you'd like. Okay, I'm going to take a little sip because I've been talking all day long today. And for some odd reason, it's still allergy season. I've had to take Zyrtec every day. Normally in August, it's not really allergy season anymore. So if you notice me being a little, I've had a little bit of some allergies and sneezing and stuff. Okay, so Henri II of France marries Caterina de' Medici, and in so doing unites Italy and France. Catherine de' Medici had a gift that was given to her. This is really the story of French perfume. Watch out when you get a gift. It could lead to something really magical. You never know, right? I always say gifts that you don't intend to receive are often signs placed on your path to kind of lead you, go look at this or go learn about that. She was given a gift of scented leather gloves, okay? They had just started in France to make these really ornate leather gloves for women. They'd been making them for men. But for women, they noticed that the leather smelled real bad, okay? Now you have to know, before perfume, everybody smelled bad. I mean, you know this, right? This is why the ancients in Mesopotamia started burning stuff, right? I mean, this didn't smell good, that didn't smell good, this didn't smell good, nothing smelled good. If you don't bathe for, it takes me about a week of not bathing to really smell bad. For some reason, I don't know what it is, but I don't emit a lot of body odor. Some people, it takes them like an hour of not bathing before things go really south. So, but our ancestors did not smell good. If you have fantasies of your ancestors smelling so nice, anytime before the late 1700s, I have to tell you that those are indeed fantasies. Your ancestors probably smelled like animals. So she was given a gift, Catherine was, for her wedding, of these scented gloves, what they called cuir parfumé, okay, scented leather. And what the leather maker had done is the leather maker had a connection to a French lavender field, okay, and had started to macerate, meaning literally like crush up these lavender flowers and putting them in an oil, which I imagine could have been an olive oil or another kind of oil that would have been easy enough to procure. And he was tanning the hide with this perfumed oil. It's mostly made of lavender. Okay, and so in order to make the leather not smell bad for Catherine, because it was a gift, he tanned the leather with this lavender scented oil. Okay, and so then the word spread real fast, as it does, as fast as it could without Facebook or Twitter, right? But back in the day, all of a sudden everybody knew you could get scented leather gloves with this incredible lavender situation, okay? Well, then Catherine was like, I just want the scent. How do I just get the scent? And then it was like, well, shit. Now she just wants that smell. She doesn't want the glove. She wants the thing, right? So then everybody scattered, how do we do this? And this is the beginning of cologne, if you will, right? So what they started to do was macerate the flowers and put them into water. And that was really what they started to create. So it was these flower waters that were spreading, what we would call like a hydrosol today. And again, they weren't looking at, you know, preservatives or how to make it shelf stable or anything like that. They were just macerating the flowers, putting them into water, and voila, you have cologne, right? Now, then it started to get more complicated. How do we make something that doesn't go rancid? As you macerate flowers, put them in some water, sit it in your windowsill, after a couple days, that has some friends growing in it, right? Doesn't really smell so good anymore. So that's exactly right, eau de toilette, right? Parfum came around when we started to realize that we could work with alcohol to make something that's more shelf stable. And it evolved through different kinds of alcohol to what we have today, which is not, your perfume today is not made with vodka, right? This is denatured alcohol. Ethanol is what perfumer's alcohol, if you will. There are other things that you can use. Some people use something called Everclear, which is pretty much 100% alcohol to make their perfumes. You don't need to do that. And then, of course, came the rise of the distillation of other oils that we now know as carrier oils, which allowed us to venture into non-alcohol based parfum, more of an oil base that was still not entirely shelf stable. Jojoba to this day is the most shelf stable of all of the carrier oils. A lot of them go rancid really quickly, which is why I don't use them. I don't use sweet almond, for example, because that has to be refrigerated. I don't want to put my perfumes in a refrigerator all the time. You know what I mean? Like, that's too high maintenance for me. So those are really and then you have to remember, before France, they were making perfume, like solid perfume, what they called unguents, right? In Egypt and in Mesopotamia and in Greece and Rome, they were making sort of like a paste. And so the unguents were another form, what we might call a traditional sort of solid perfume today, working with beeswax, for example. You drank Everclear in college. I don't recommend it. It's not great for your liver. I've never tried it. But that's one of the reasons SG uses jojoba, because I have some of my original perfumes. I still have the original bottle of Dea that I made in 1990 was when the first time I made Dea perfume. Was after that experience of learning with my mom. And I got a hold of tuberose and patchouli and started to blend. The tuberose I was working with was a fine synthetic, and the patchouli was natural. And so I combined the two. That became Dea, and to this day, that is, now I add a little bit of gardenia to Dea, because tuberose can be too kind of sticky sweet, and I kind of like how gardenia rounds it out a little bit. But to this day, Dea is still, but Dea, eventually, I was able to access pure tuberose absolute. So Dea got an upgrade once I discovered a Southeast Asian Indonesian distillery that has tuberose absolute. So eventually I was able to find things. At the time, there was no way to have tuberose absolute. That was impossible. So I have some of my original perfumes. I have my original bottle of Dea from 1990 that still smells good, believe it or not. There's nothing left in the bottle, but the bottle smells good. I still have a lot of my SG perfumes from 2011, 2012, and they're still good. Certain oils, I don't even know if we have Dea right now. But if you're ever like, I'd like to try a Sage Goddess perfume, I don't know where to start, Dea is a nice place to start because it kind of kickstarted the whole thing. It's the first one I ever offered through SG too. Because I was like, well, this is really like, when you smell Dea, that's what I smell like. Even now, most of the time I just wear straight patchouli, but when I do wear a blend, it's usually with Dea. Tuberose is pretty amazing. So anyway, that was my initiation into perfume, and then from there, the rest is history. I've been obsessed ever since. And when you really get to know the oils, like when you work with a Spanish lavender versus an Egyptian lavender versus a French lavender versus a Bulgarian lavender, your nose will know the difference. You'll start to go, oh, this one's sweeter, this one's sharper, this one's rounder, this one's more faint, you know what I mean? This one's stronger. And then you can compare and contrast and actually decide, so which country's lavender is your favorite? I do think the one today from France is pretty special. Yeah, if you see certain perfumes not in stock at Sage Goddess, just so you know, it's because of the distillery situation and because of the fact that we still are having trouble getting oils because of COVID. So if something's out of stock, we have an entire list of because I've made about 700, I think it's 730 oils since I started SG in 2011. Isn't that crazy? And I would say probably like maybe 60 of them are in stock at any particular time, and some of them we could never bring back. But we've gone through a whole list and we've tried to order ingredients, and in some cases we've been successful, in some cases not. But I'm definitely hoping that that will turn around next year, hopefully. Okay, so back to the French story. I just want to make sure I'm looking to my notes to make sure, because my notes are not necessarily in the order I want to teach them. Okay, the first French perfumer, the first French perfumer, I'm going to have to cycle back because my notes talk about a lot of different things, was named Jean-François Houbigant, Houbigant. Has anyone heard of Houbigant? Jean-François? Houbigant is the original French perfumer, also one of the best known French perfumers. And Houbigant created a perfume for the first French perfume shop that was opened in 1774. So that begins our French timeline. Now, again, back up the truck for a second. 1533 is when Caterina de' Medici marries Henri II. It is 1774 when the first French perfume shop opens, okay? What's happening, and the first French perfume house is opened in 1747. So 1533, we're talking over 200 years from the time that these first scented gloves were given as a wedding gift to the point where anyone was distilling oils in earnest in the country of France. Isn't that amazing? So people think it was like real quick. Like all of a sudden Catherine's got her gloves and she's like, what else you got? It was 200 years before anyone could say what else they could offer Catherine. There was nothing else to really offer Catherine until 200 years later. So I'm going to walk you through the evolution. By the way, Houbigant, does anybody know of the perfume company called Creed? Have you seen it? Maybe you've gone into a department store, maybe you've been on Sephora.com, and maybe you're like me and you poke around the perfume sections because it's interesting. Has anyone ever seen Creed perfume? So Creed, the Creed family, took over where Houbigant began. So the entire company, right? So Creed has a fantastic reputation, and they are artisan perfumers. I mean, they are very skilled, very gifted, have a long lineage of working in France. Creed bought the company from the Houbigant family and really picked up where Houbigant started. Now, Creed perfumes, spray perfumes like the size of Saint Germain are going to run you anywhere from, really depends on the blend because they base the price on the oils that are inside, anywhere from $100 to $500 for a bottle of Creed perfume. Now, I'm going to say, Sage Goddess prices on perfume are nuts. I mean, most of our perfumes are around $35, $39. The most expensive perfume this year has been Saint Germain, which is still under $100. If you go to buy perfume from Diptyque, Jo Malone, which again are hybrid, natural synthetic, Creed, the minimum you're going to spend for a small bottle is $100, and the maximum can be up to $500 or $600. So I have to say, I'm really proud of Sage Goddess pricing, and but you have to put it in the context of these are very expensive. Most people who make perfume, we don't make a lot of money on perfume because it costs us so much to make it. And it's funny because there's kind of there's a myth around perfuming that it's very cheap to make perfume because there's so little oil and so much alcohol and other ingredients. But Sage Goddess perfumes are only cut at the minimum 50%. Usually it's 75% essential oils and absolutes to 25% carrier. In France, it's usually 5% essential oil or absolute to 95% carrier. So they are much more diluted and not as strong. One of the things I like about Jo Malone, I've never seen Jo Malone sell just oils. Their perfumes are hybrid, synthetic, and natural. So they'll combine a natural rose with a synthetic bluebell, for example, or something like that. One of the things about that company is they don't dilute quite as much. Theirs are a little bit stronger. I think their dilution is 30%. So they're a little bit better than some of the other ingredients. When you go to a Nordstrom or a Macy's, and I won't judge you, I mean, I've done it too, and you buy a Britney Spears circus perfume or whatever it's called, that is not expensive. That is a very that is not a fine synthetic. That's what we call a base synthetic. It's a very cheap scent molecule that doesn't cost much to produce, and then they dilute usually around 90 to 95% with ethanol, right? So you can end up paying $60 for a bottle of perfume that might have cost the person who's making it 50 cents, and then maybe it cost them, you know, a few dollars for the bottle. So you can start to see where it can be it's a billion-dollar industry, the perfume industry. When you start getting into hybrid perfumes or full essential oil absolute based perfumes, the margin is very different. Usually they're making at most maybe 10 or 15% profit on a perfume like that, depending on the ingredients and the dilution rate. So I would say go with brands that you know and trust, and there are some really good ones out there. Le Labo is another company. I spent some time in their French boutique, and they some of their blends are entirely synthetic. Some of them are hybrid synthetic and fine synthetic and essential oil too. Yeah, I'm checking to see if you have any questions that I can respond to really quickly. Yeah, I'm pretty picky, but there are some that I really like. I'm not familiar with that one. Therese is asking about Ball of Versailles. I'm not familiar with that one. I'm not sure about Nicki Minaj. I don't know. L'Occitanie is a beautiful company, and they do some naturals, like their lavender, their verbena, those are natural and not synthetic, and then they do some fine synthetic blends. Chanel is fine synthetic. Chanel is entirely fine synthetic. Guerlain, we're going to talk about Guerlain tonight, yeah. Auvet in New Orleans, Uniquely Deborah, is my favorite. When I go to New Orleans, which is not very often, unfortunately, because I love it so much, I wish I could go there all the time. The first place I stop is Auvet, but Auvet is fine synthetic, but it's beautiful. They have an incredible patchouli, but it's fine synthetic. So that's another case where it's like people say, "Oh, I love Auvet," and it's like, see, you do like synthetic, right? Their perfumes are fine synthetics, but again, a fine synthetic oil will sometimes cost you more than the natural version, depending on the quality of it and the intensity of it, right? Estee Lauder is going to be, Estee Lauder actually has some hybrid blends. I'm trying to think of the one, oh, what's the one that I like from Estee Lauder? Or maybe it's, no, it's Lancome. Lancome has one that I like. What's it called? It has patchouli in it, and it's real good. It'll come to me. And that's a hybrid, synthetic and natural. Yeah, I'm not familiar with Ball of Versailles, but you'll have to introduce me to it. Cartier is hybrid, natural and fine synthetic. They have one called Le Baiser de Dragon, which is the dragon's kiss, and that has an oud accord that's absolutely incredible, but that's a fine synthetic accord. Givenchy is a hybrid of fine synthetic and essential oils. Yeah. Estee Lauder tests on animals? I didn't know that. Yeah, I mean, it's discouraging, but there are a lot of companies that have and that do. I try very hard not to work with products that are from companies that test on animals if I can avoid it. And usually I can avoid it. So Hermes is a hybrid. Mm-hmm. No, Tresor is beautiful. Tresor is synthetic. The one I'm thinking of from Lancome, is it Lancome? I'm trying to remember. I almost want to go grab the bottle because I have a bottle in my bathroom and I'm like visualizing the bottle. I can see it in my mind. It'll come to me and I'll post it on the event page. I love it. It's very sexy. My favorite perfumes are called Chypre. Chypre. Chypre perfumes are a little bit animalistic and kind of have like a mossy fern undertone, kind of like wolf perfume is a chypre. Um, Wolf perfume reminds me of a very fine French chypre, and that was my intention in creating it. So yeah, no, it's a different one. It might be. It's either Estee Lauder or Lancome. I will find out and tell you about it. It's an older one, by the way, from the '80s. It's not a newer one. They wouldn't sell it now. They don't sell it as much now because what I like is not in style. Okay, so going back to where I was, the French Revolution in France really postponed the development of French perfuming. I'm sure that won't surprise you. Just like COVID is putting a pause on our own cultivation of perfuming and distilleries and all of that. Whenever you've got a major global event going on that's taking people's lives and disrupting the status quo and the flow of life as we know it, it sort of paralyzes the development. So there was about a 50-year period where the focus was just elsewhere, but then it picked up after that. The French perfume world really grew with the arrival of fine synthetic notes, and that happened in 1802 was the arrival of fine synthetics to France. Now, the arrival of fine synthetics in France had two primary purposes, okay? The first purpose was, and the most important purpose, and I'm sure this will make sense to you, there was a desire on the part of these early French perfumers. They did not like the idea that only rich people and aristocracy and monarchs could afford perfume, and at the time, that's what it was. Catherine of Medici had perfume, but you and I would not have back in France, right? So there was this desire on the part of these early perfumers to put perfume in the hands of the common folks. And what they realized was, unless they could develop something synthetic, because the amount of distilleries and access to those lavender fields in Provence and what was available in Italy, because Italy was already in production of all of the different citrus oils, for example, and we'll talk about that in just a second. That whole process was very limited. You could only get so much lavender from your fields each year during the harvest. So the first intention with bringing these fine synthetics forward and developing them in the laboratories was to make perfume available to people who didn't have a lot of money. The second intention was to expand the repertoire of artisan perfumers so that they weren't locked in and locked down with 10 ingredients in their repertoire, because they were basically limited to what they could get from Europe, right? So they could get certain oils from Italy. They could get a limited amount coming from Egypt. They could grow what they could grow in Provence, which is extensive, right? Because you've got great weather, so you can grow beautiful jasmine, especially jasmine sambac grows beautifully there. Roses grow wild. There's still a jasmine festival in France every year, and of course a lavender festival in France every year. I'm loving your comments, by the way, because I love all of those perfumes. Samsara was the first perfume my mom ever bought me, and I teased her about this when I first started studying Buddhism, because I said, remember, Mom, how the first perfume you ever bought me was Shalimar that she bought me first, but I didn't like Shalimar. And so she decided to try me on Samsara, and I loved Samsara. But I think I was in my mid-20s when I started studying Buddhism, and I said, Mom, do you know what samsara is? And she's like, it's the perfume that you love. And I was like, no, but do you know what it's named for? And she was like, is it a woman's name? And I said, no. Samsara in Buddhism is the cycle of life and death. It's the loop of the human existence, right? Like, we keep going through these cycles of living and dying, and we get trapped in these cycles of samsara until we reach enlightenment, right? And I'm like, the first perfume you ever bought me was named for this like shitty human cycle that we're all in and trapped in as a result of karma and dharma and learning our life lessons and stuff, right? It means suffering, but the thing is how it means suffering, Glenn, and the way it means suffering is that you have to go through these cycles of human existence, right, to live and learn and go through your karma and dharma. Anyway, my mom was like, why would they name it that? I was like, it's a very popular concept. But yeah, it's the cycles of life and death and rebirth. And my mom chose that for me, so I thought that was kind of interesting in its own way, right? Yeah, so anyway, I still tease her. I'm like, remember samsara? And she's like, I had no idea it was the cycles of human existence, it's just so strange, right? So I thought that was kind of funny. Okay, so the first perfume, and I'm sharing some of this with you. I don't know how interesting this is to you, but I find all this stuff really interesting, so I'm like, I'm going to share all this with them. The first perfume ever made by Ubigan in France, which is again now owned by the Creed family, was called Fougère Royale. So this is the first proper French blend ever to come from the major perfume houses in France. And Fougère Royale, right? And thank you, by the way, for asking about my mom. I'm really glad I could be here with you today. My mom had heart surgery 2 days ago, and she's had a few complications, but nothing that I was worried I was going to have to cancel today's class if it didn't go well. So the fact that I'm here with you is a celebration. I never like to have to cancel anything, but as those of you with aging parents know, things can come up at the last minute. She's still in the hospital, but we're hoping for a weekend discharge, so thank you for asking. So Fougère Royale was a combination of lavender with clary sage and bergamot. It's not earth-shattering. I mean, it's pretty, right? It definitely is. That's not my favorite combination. I like bergamot, but I don't like it posed with anything that's too sharp. You put lavender with bergamot for me, and I'm like. And by the way, thank you for your prayers. I really appreciate it. It was very touch and go on Tuesday, so I held my breath until Tuesday night. So thank you so much for your sweet thoughts. I didn't want to mention anything and take away from class, but since you guys were asking, I figured I would tell you. So anyway, it's not my favorite thing. Now, I do love me some clary sage, but I like clary sage mixed with jasmine. Like, again, clary sage is it's not as sharp as lavender and bergamot. You have to remember what bergamot is, right? Like, bergamot is all of the parts of the orange taken together, especially the rind of the bergamot fruit, which is quite bitter. So I don't like bitter with bitter. And the bergamot, for me, actually makes the lavender even more bitter. The clary sage saves it a little bit because clary sage has a little bit of a roundness to it. But it's really a top note and middle note based perfume. There's really, to my mind, in that combination, no base note. Whereas I'm an all base note girl. I like my vetivers and my patchoulis and my cedars, and like that's where I get excited. My oak moss, right? Like I like a big round bottom on my perfumes. I don't like to be top heavy. But anyway, Fougère Royale is very, right, it's much more medicinal. It's exactly right, Nancy Campbell, and I think that's why it doesn't sing to me, because I like a big round I like a big booty perfume. And I'll remind you of what that means in just a few minutes too. Clary sage is excellent though for anti-aging. It's fantastic for women like me who are going through menopause, right? Or if you're in perimenopause, a little bit ahead of where I am, or I guess behind where I am, it's good for you too. Like it really does help to balance sort of the female energetic system. But you gotta pop me with some bass. That's right, I need a little bass note there to make it's all treble and no bass. You gotta throw some patchouli in there, some cedar, some vetiver, something to drop me down a little bit in order for me to get excited about it. Okay, so 1775, we have Fougère Royale coming on the scene. Let's back it up and let me kind of trace. I won't take too long because I do want to get to blending. I know you guys love that part, but I hope you do also enjoy this part, because part of my goal is to help you feel like maybe you can feel like what it would have been like to be in France at this time. And then there's vestiges to this day. If you're walking through the streets of Paris today, you're going to walk by Fragonard perfume shops, right? Well, House Fragonard was one of the original perfume houses, developed in 1926. It's the latest, it's the last of what I would call the houses, the maison. in France. It was the last one to be cultivated. So it's the child on the block. But I will tell you, their boutiques really hold it down. They do a beautiful job. They have a whole team of researchers and perfumers who do nothing but just create scent profiles for them. And then they do all the corollary products. They make their own candles. You know what I mean? They do it right. So if you say, oh, if you ever tell me, oh, I went to France and I went to Fragonard and I found a beautiful perfume, what I would say is great. And you can totally buy Fragonard online. In fact, now their website's built out so nicely. So they have certain products they'll ship to the US and then certain products that you have to be in France to buy. But that's really nice. Like I have a lot of French companies that I love, and a lot of them don't ship to the US, so I have to wait to shop when I'm there. Fragonard's one of those companies that's really developed a hybrid French-US presence, and they do ship to the US. You can also oftentimes find some of these on eBay. You know what I mean? One of my favorite perfumes of all time is called Mille by Jean Patou. Have you heard of it? Mille means 1,000, so in English it's 1,000, and it actually is the number 1,000. Patou, the Patou, House Patou, has said famously that there are 1,000 flowers in Mille. It's not true. But Jackie Kennedy wore Mille, and Mille is a patchouli-based scent. Jackie Kennedy's favorite oil, like mine, was patchouli. And so I was able to get an original bottle of Patou Mille on eBay. I bought it for myself a couple of years ago as a Christmas gift. I paid, I think, $200 for it. And it's in the original box. It's signed and dated. It's sealed. Like, I collect little things like that. So Mille in French, 1,000 is M-I-L-L-E. But if you're searching for, you can search Patou 1000, P-A-T-O-U, by the way. Patou's most famous perfume is called Joy. And again, Patou is a French perfumer that does a really beautiful job, but Jackie Kennedy was famous for wearing Mille. And I feel sexy when I wear Mille. I wore Mille all the way through graduate school, and I would wear it with Dea, because Mille, again, is a patchouli-based perfume. So yeah, M-I-L-L-E. I'm not as big a fan of Joy perfume. That's their iconic scent that everybody knows and loves. But again, I'm not a heavy floral person. It's got to have a base. So Joy perfume is all top notes and heart notes, which is beautiful as you get those big round florals and stuff, but it doesn't have a real strong booty underneath it, whereas Mille is almost all booty and no boobs. What a crude way of describing it. But I'm more of an all booty, no boobs kind of girl. Anyway, so let's back up. So the first French perfume house that was formed was Maison Gallinard, and that happened in 1747. If you want a full list of the notes, by the way, in Joy and in Mille, if you Google notes in Joy perfume or notes in Mille perfume or 1000, Patou 1000, it'll show you the list of notes, by the way. There's also a website called Base Notes. I think it's called Base Notes, B-A-S-E-N-O-T-E-S, I think. And you can search top, middle, and base notes. Joy has a lot of notes in it, but it is a rose forward, whereas Patou 1000 is patchouli forward. There's also a Kriegler, is a perfumer that Jackie Kennedy loved. I went to the Kriegler boutique in New York City 4 or 5 years ago. I wasn't a big fan of the one that Kriegler says was her favorite. I ended up getting something else from Kriegler. But anyway, it's fun to talk about these things. So Maison Gallinard, G-A-L-I-N-A-R-D, Gallinard, was established in 1747. And that is the launch of really the formation of having an in-country presence where you are both distilling, bottling, and then selling and distributing parfum, okay? After 1747, the next real powerful development in the world of perfume, I'm going to take you outside of France for a minute because we have to talk about England, because England was quick on the heels of France, and England has Penhaligon's. Anybody familiar with Penhaligon's? Yeah, Mille is M-I-L-L-E, which means 1,000 in French. Une mille. Une mille. So England got jealous of France, what was going on there, and they were like, I can grow lavender. You know, what's so special about it? I can grow roses, right? And they totally can. In the English countryside, you can grow all those things. So the English were like, forget about that. We're not going to be left behind. And so Florists of London established their perfumery in 1820. And I will tell you something. So Susan's in the UK. I love Penhaligon's. You know, it is so, in my opinion, so uniquely British. And some of Penhaligon's perfumes, Penhaligon's is another brand that does a hybrid of the fine synthetic with the natural essential oils and absolutes. And they have really diversified their portfolio. When I was in London shopping at Penhaligon's, which was back in 1998, I think, 97. I was in my early 20s, 96, 97. After I graduated from college, we went to London, and I got to be in Penhaligon's for the first time. And their inventory was rather limited. They serve the monarchy, so their perfumes are in the royal household, and the bottles are beautiful. Like kind of everything's done really nicely. They have these little bow ties on their bottles, and it's all very on point. So but Penhaligon's wasn't established until 1870 in the UK. If you haven't, I want to encourage you to go to these websites and check these shops out. Go to fragonard.com, go to penhaligons.com just to learn. You know, on their websites, they'll have a little About Us section. Again, if you geek out on this stuff, you'll get to enjoy the aesthetics of it. If you ever go to England or to any part of the UK, you should go to Penhaligon's. If you ever go to France, you should go to Fragonard, right? Like, these are the things that you should do. Yeah, their Artemisia is beautiful. I have a friend of mine bought me the body lotion as a birthday gift a couple of years ago. There's one that they have that's sort of Middle Eastern. I'm trying to remember the name of it. Penhaligon's has it. It's very expensive. It's one of their most expensive. I don't own it. I got a sample, and it's exquisite. It's just I'll be honest with you, I have trouble paying $250 or $300 for a perfume. I really have trouble with that, especially if I know the dilution rate is 50%, which is what most of these companies are. I just struggle. Because I know if I know the ingredient list, I can make it for less. I can make it for probably half. So I always kind of like to find out what the notes are and then see if I can make it for myself. It's very rare, extremely rare, that I will ever spend $250 to $500 for perfume. There's a perfume or two, Maison Kyrkoujian, I think it is. Which does a really nice job, mostly natural actually, and not too diluted, but then their perfumes run from the $300 range up to the $500-600 range. La Ligue does fine synthetics that range from $300 or $400 to about $800 or $900, and again, it's like there's something in me that stops me from doing it. They're beautiful, the bottles are beautiful, but I will tell you, that is not necessarily what should be the cost of that perfume. Yeah, you can always, oil-based perfumes, you can always take and make a solid perfume, a scented candle. What you have to do is be careful, because if you add too much of an oil-based perfume or even of the base oils to your candles, if you use too much, it can make the wax really hard to harden. So that's why candle making is really a science. So is solid perfume making. I mean, you can melt beeswax and add your oils to it, but if the proportions are exactly right, then you're going to have something that doesn't solidify at room temperature. So they get expensive. So that's why, like, if you were to go into my little apothecary cabinet right now, I have some nice perfumes, but they top out at about $100. It's really hard for me to go and spend more than that. If I buy a Jo Malone, which is very uncommon, I'm not the biggest fan of their perfumes. I did buy their Red Roses because I think it's really beautiful. It's synthetic, but it's incredible. But I bought the little bottle. Because I can't do it, knowing what I know. So 1747, Maison Gallinard is founded. Florists of London comes right behind them in 1820. Again, remember, perfumers in London at the time, I know this isn't a class on England, but they were able to import the same oils. They could import from France, they could import from Italy, and also from Egypt. Napoleon Bonaparte was a customer of Maison Guerlain. A lot of you mentioned Guerlain early on. Guerlain has the iconic perfume Shalimar, along with many others, including Samsara. Maison Guerlain's sort of tagline for their marketing was "From the field to flacon," right? So their thing was, we grow our own flowers and herbs, we harvest them, we distill them, we bottle the perfume, we bring it to the market. So they were, you know, end-to-end perfumers, which was unique at the time. To this day, I still think Guerlain is a good value because they're using fine synthetics, really good natural ingredients when they can. The dilution rate is not too strong. You get a nice long-lasting perfume, especially, yeah, Mitsuko is beautiful. I can't even imagine any of the Guerlain perfumes that I would love. Everything I have smelled is incredible. They actually have a very high-end line that you would love if you're into the resin-based perfumes. But again, those, I've smelled them all. They're beautiful, but they're all in that $200 to $400 range. So Maison Gallinard, 1747. Floris of London, 1820. Now we're at 1828. Guerlain has established their maison. Maison means house in French. Maison Guerlain is established 1828. They are creating parfum for Napoleon Bonaparte and for the French royalty and aristocracy. 21 years later, Molinard establishes House Molinard in Grasse. And again, they are field to bottle. They are growing their own lavender, their own vetiver, their own rose, their own citrus. They are distilling their own citrus. They are bottling their own perfumes in-house. They have their own in-house parfumer, and then they are bringing the perfume to market. And that happened in 1849. Queen Victoria of England, it was a ruckus because she preferred Molinard perfumes to Floris of London. And so it was a little bit of an uproar. That would change in 1870 with the rise of Penhaligon's in the UK. And again, I'm super grateful for Penhaligon's because I just think everything they make is exquisite. The quality, the packaging. I ordered Zoe a gift, a very small hamper from Penhaligon's a year or two ago for Christmas, and it comes in these beautiful boxes, and it's all inlaid, and they do an incredible job. They were the first major British perfume house, meaning international distribution, you know, which Floris of London had regional distribution, Penhaligon's had global distribution, and then now with the advent of perfumery online, you can ship Penhaligon's to the US or anywhere else in the world. Yeah. Oh, I don't have my pipette. Oh, I do have my pipette. You scared me there for a minute. If you have just remember to clean your pipette with rubbing alcohol before we blend in just a minute. Yes, I think they're beautiful shops. They're beautiful people. The staff is well trained. Again, Penhaligon's is much like Fragonard. If you're going to work there, you're going to learn the history of perfuming. There's nothing you can't ask someone who works in Penhaligon's. They know everything. They understand how perfumes are made. They can speak to you about the ingredients. They can talk to you about the distilleries. They can talk to you about, you know, pretty much anything. Whereas again, if you go into Macy's here in the US and you ask about a perfume, 9 times out of 10 they're like, I don't really know. And to me, that's kind of what sets the European perfume houses apart from the way perfume is sold in the US. Now, Jo Malone is an exception to that. What else might be an exception to that? Le Labo, if you find it in the US, is an exception, but Jo Malone in particular stands out to me. When you go to the Jo Malone counter in a department store, they're also going to be able to tell you. They're highly trained. A lot of times they travel to different parts of the world for their training. They'll spend some time in the UK. They understand the structure of perfume. They can talk to you about the notes in their perfumes and compare and contrast the different blends, and they can talk to you about, you know, the proportions of the oils and things in their perfumes. And that's, again, to me, that's impressive, just because most people who sell perfume don't really know that much about it. So when I have a professional who's sharing information with me, I find that really exciting. Caron is the next French perfume house on the market, established in 1904, Caron. That is the perfume house that created this iconic bottle, and this is the one I'm giving away. It's got the little glass stopper, which a lot of modern bottles don't have, but was something quite common to see at the time. House Caron, established 1904. The most famous Caron perfume at the time was called Narcisse Noir, made with a fine synthetic narcissus, and that perfume was featured in the movie Sunset Boulevard. And so Quran was really put on the map when that movie came out. And then the last major perfume house established either in France or in the UK was Fragonard in 1926. They'll be celebrating their 100-year anniversary. I told Dave it was really my goal to go back to Paris in 2026 because they're having a big 100-year Cianon, celebration for House Fragonard. And I think it'd be really cool to be there in person. I don't know if that's going to happen. I've been thinking about bringing more kind of. I have someone who makes custom bottles for me now, and I've thought about trying to recreate more of that like high drama of the 20th century French perfuming when they were doing all of those ornate cut crystal bottles and bringing a little bit more of that, 19th and 20th century vintage romantic flair, because today the bottles are all sort of, they don't have those glass stoppers and all the things, so I've been thinking about doing more of that. Okay, let me see if there's anything from my notes that I forgot to mention to you. I did want to talk briefly about accords. I know I mentioned it to you earlier, and then we'll start to blend. My friend who's an artisan perfumer, and like I said, and also kind of studied it academically, so he's got kind of that book knowledge aspect of it too. He said what changed the perfume industry forever, and I have to agree with him, is the rise of what we call the accords. Are all of you familiar with what an accord is? ACCORD. I would be remiss if I didn't talk to you about this, because when we study Indonesia next month, it's not going to be as relevant. Accords are really a French creation, although they've taken a real foothold here in the US and certainly in the UK. So accords are, like I said, I think I mentioned I took a class where we had an assignment to build an accord, and it was very stressful. Okay, so if you're studying perfume with a teacher, they will teach you how to make accords. So basically, what an accord is I would say to you, make me a gardenia perfume, but you can't use gardenia. Okay? You can use any of these 2,000 different molecules, right? Some of which sound familiar and some of which sound like chemical names. And usually there's a wall of them, right? Accord making is the art of making a scent without that particular scent in it. and it's freaking hard to do, okay? Yeah, so it literally would be like me saying, I want you to make me gardenia. It needs to smell exactly like gardenia. It cannot have our gardenia in it, right? So when my teacher said, make me an amber accord, what she was saying was, go find something, and usually accords have 3 to 5 notes in them. Go make me amber without using amber. Where do you start, right? So accords changed the landscape of perfume, because what we realized with the advent of accords is that we actually could make anything. But it is chemistry class. And what's interesting about accords, so in a classroom, in that one I think there were 20 people, my accord didn't smell like anybody else's accord, but they all smelled like amber. We just came at it from different ways, okay? And then what happened is they started to create these synthetics that had their own names to them, right? And sometimes they were, like for example, there's a synthetic called coumarin, okay? But coumarin is a distillate of tonka bean, but it's also a coagulation of these molecules. So coumarin is sometimes used in amber accords because it has like an ambery scent to it. It's partly distilled from tonka beans. So you really have to know, it's like make me a chocolate cake, but you can't use chocolate or flour. But it's got to taste just like chocolate cake. For me, I like a challenge because one of my expertise areas is I'm really good at recreating a scent. I don't do it so much anymore because it takes me, I used to do it as a service for people. There used to be a little place on the website where if you wanted me to recreate a scent, I think I charged $100, and you could send me your old bottle and I would send you a new bottle full. And I loved the challenge. I had a customer once who sent me a bottle of perfume and she was like, this was my mom's favorite. It's so super special to me. I really need to be able to have this again. You're the only person who can do this. And I was able to figure it out. And the weird ingredient, she's like, there's something in it. And I kept getting it almost right, but not there, and almost right, but not there. Finally, I realized there was a synthetic strawberry in it. Okay. I could not nail this thing. I just could not get it. I had everything else right. And so finally I was like, I think there's a berry note or a berry accord in there. And so I ordered this little sampler of berry molecules. And I went blackberry, no. Boysenberry, no. Blueberry, ooh, no. And finally I smelled the strawberry and I was like, oh my God. And then I brought the strawberry to the bottle that I had blended and smelled it, and it was like, oh my God, that's her perfume. So I was able to get it, but it takes me, I mean, that took me weeks, right? Because I was blending and it wasn't quite right. Then I had to order something else and bring it in and try to blend it again. But I love a scent challenge because I can kind of take scents apart with my nose and figure out what's what. Pretty fun, right? Okay, so now I do want to remind you of this little handout. This is in your classroom. It's also on the event page, so you don't need to like run print this out or anything like that. But and I'll tell you something. If you have a good nose too, I think it's a past life thing. I really do. One of the reasons why I'm still, at the end of the day, I'm a resin girl. Okay, and the reason is, I know for sure I've been on this planet before. I'm sure you have too. We probably knew each other. We're probably friends back in Mesopotamia or whatever, right? How many times have you been alive and smelled frankincense, myrrh, copal, right? Spikenard. What else would have been around? Olibanum, galbanum, right? Rock rose. Your soul knows these smells. The spirits know it too, right? So that's when you burn copal, I think the whole spirit world goes, oh shit, she's got stuff. We should all go to her house. Do you smell that? She knows, right? Like, I'm sure the spirit world celebrates, but I really believe those of us with good noses, it's just because we're 15,000 years old. You know what I mean? We've been doing this for a while. And then we get back into a body and all of a sudden your body's like, holy shit, I remember that. How many of you had that feeling when you first smelled, when I first smelled white sage, I knew I was remembering it. When I first smelled frankincense, I knew I was remembering it. This was not like, oh, I've never smelled this before. This was like, oh, here we go again, right? So I really do think that younger souls tend to not have as refined a palate as people who've kind of been doing this dance a couple times, and we know a thing or two, right? From being in church. That's the other way we know it too. All right. So this handout that I want to, this is one that we made here at SG, and it's just a good reminder that when you make a scent, and this is rough, okay? I'll be honest with you. If I have my way, there's more like 50% base notes in a blend, because I just love me some vetiver, patchouli, vanilla, musk, amber, myrrh, frankincense, cedar. Neroli can be a heart note or a bottom note. Sandalwood, balsam of Peru, right? Palo Santo is more of a top note. But so these are my favorites. But a good perfume, a well-constructed or architected, as they say, perfume is going to have a balance of mostly bottom notes, a good amount of heart notes. Note de coeur is how you say it in French. Note de fond is how you say base notes in French. Note de tête. Tête means head, so head or heart of top notes. I'm not as much a fan of the top notes, but you're going to notice the top notes tend to be very medicinal, right? Heart notes tend to be floral. That's not a hard and fast rule. Foundational notes tend to be either resin-based, right? Or very dark oils, very dark, thick, mellifluous, right? Like very sort of viscous oils. The head and top notes tend to be quite clear. They tend to be less viscous. They tend to be thinner and a little runnier. just to give you sort of a baseline of how to know whether you have a top, middle, or base. Again, most of your florals are going to be heart notes, and those are true heart openers. I do think you have to have a heart note in a blend, but you do have a lot of diversity in terms of your heart notes. Sometimes what we would think of as a top note, you put it in a blend, it really starts to function as a heart note. Like lavender is a top note, but lavender absolute to me is a heart note, and it can function as a heart note in your blend. In this perfume, Orris is your base, neroli is your heart, lavender is your top, okay? Depending on how you construct or architect this blend, it can be very lavender forward, meaning that's what you smell first, but almost in every blend, if there's no other top note, is going to be lavender forward, because you smell your top note first, then as your perfume dries down, this is what you smell out the bottle. Then it dries down a little bit, usually after about a minute, to a heart note. And then what's left after about 3 to 5 minutes until the perfume is through its cycle is your base note. So that's what we talk about when we talk about a dry down. What does it dry down to? It tends to dry down to the base note. Does that make sense? Honey or beeswax absolute, which I work with quite frequently because I really love it. That's what's in Queen Bee, for example. That's going to be a base note. Beeswax absolute is a base note. Well, lavender can be a chameleon, and it can be a real jerk. I'll tell you something. Lavender will hijack a perfume so fast. So let's go over to my blending place. You got to be careful with lavender. She's your friend and your foe. And by the way, these are your cards for today. So there's your neroli. You've got some information there. Neroli is actually considered an essential oil of the goddess Athena. My mom bought me a bottle of Joe and Malone neroli for Christmas. I want to say about 15 or 20 years ago. It actually has my name engraved on it. It's one of my prized possessions. Orris, which is actually the rhizome of the iris flower. This is distilled from the root of the iris. I can tell you all about that in a minute. And then lavender, lavandula. And we'll talk about lavender too. The reason I say she can be a real jerk is if you put too much lavender in an oil, it will hijack it. You always build your fragrances from the root to the crown, in my opinion. So the nice thing about doing it that way is you're going to add your lavender last, meaning you control the show here. So it doesn't have a chance to hijack it if you're in charge. If you were to make this perfume by placing the lavender first, you would have a heck of a time getting this perfume to smell like anything but lavender, truly. So that's why we always do our top notes last, because they're kind of the jerks of perfuming, and they like to be in control and they want to dominate. So because they're sharp, those top notes are usually sharp. That includes your citrus, that includes your rosemary, your tea tree, your lavender, your pine is a really sharp top note. You gotta be careful with the pine. It can be a real jerk too. I just dropped that, and Orris is very expensive. I'm sure you know this. It is ridiculously expensive. It's also very thick. So what I'm going to tell you is, for our blending purposes, I'm going to put this in my bra for just a second, just to sort of harden that up so that it will blend. You can hold it in your hand too. You just want to put it somewhere a little warm to get it to be a little bit more running for you for the purposes of making our perfume. So mine is right there for a few minutes while we talk about the other oils. So I'm going to start by teaching you about lavender. So I want you to bring this one to your nose. Just take a nice deep inhale of French lavender, that is Provence. These are all oils that can be taken neat, meaning they can be applied directly to the skin without burning you. Oh my gosh, all I can say is I put a little bit of that Orris that dropped on my wrist, and then I put just a drop of that lavender on top of here, and oh my god, I'm in love already. Yeah, patchouli can be a jerk too. Okay, so let me start by teaching you about lavender. I'll try to be as concise as I can, but I have so much I want to share with you, so let's dig in. Lavender has been used since Egyptian times. We have written records of lavender being used for perfume. That's about 2,500 years old. I think I'll come back and talk to you for a minute, and then once my Orris is a little bit softer, we'll blend. 2,500 years old. First recorded use of lavender in France, 16th century. And that was right around the time when that leather tanner was starting to incorporate lavender oil into his tanning processes, right? No, it's orange blossom, the Jo Malone perfume. And I honestly, I really do recommend Jo Malone's orange blossom. If you want a true alcohol-based perfume that really does smell like orange blossom, Jo Malone's the only company I know that's really nailed it. And if you love it as much as I do, that's worth the spend. She also does a candle. It's really nice. The word lavender comes from the Latin lavare. Did you know that? Those of you who speak Spanish might know that, because a lavandera is where you go and, wash your clothes. So a lot of you probably know, if you speak Spanish or the other Romance languages, that lavender actually comes from the word to wash. So interesting fast fact though, okay? I find this stuff so fascinating. So you know how Catherine got the gloves, and then everybody wanted the gloves, so like between 1533 and about 1560 to 1575, these gloves were kind of a thing. What they noticed was Lavare is the Latin, lavare. What they noticed was people didn't get cholera who were wearing the gloves. That was the first discovery that lavender actually had these antibacterial, antimicrobial, what's the other word I'm thinking of? Microbial properties. They didn't get cholera because of the gloves. So who knew? But that man who developed that particular technique for incorporating the oils into his tanning process actually saved thousands of lives. Isn't that amazing? I just shared that lavanderas are women who wash their clothes by hand for you. Wasn't that interesting? I have a friend whose last name is Lavandera, and I'm always teasing him about it. Antifungal. Thank you for that, Brandy. Microbial and fungal. But isn't that fascinating about cholera? Here they thought they were just benefiting from the smell, right? Because just they made the gloves not smell so bad. The Egyptians were using lavender in their ritual mummification processes and in the preparation of bodies for the afterlife. So that's another way that we know that lavender was worked with. Queen Victoria was a huge fan. It's referenced in the Bible too. There's some speculation that we know that Jesus's feet, that Mary Magdalene anointed his feet with spikenard, but it's believed that she washed his feet with lavender. What we believe happened with lavender is that she was just placing the lavender flowers into the basin where his feet were being washed. We don't know of any documented distillery or distillation processes or maceration processes at that time. So what we believe is that Magdalene would have put the lavender flowers into the basin to wash Jesus's feet. In the 1930s, there was a French chemist, Gattefossé, who burned his hand in a laboratory. He put the oil on it to treat the burn and ended up writing a whole book. And then doctors during World War II incorporated lavender essential oil into their traveling medicine kits for wound treatment and to speed up the healing of burns and topical wounds as well. Fascinating, right? So today we work with lavender for relaxation. We know that it helps to calm and soothe the central nervous system. It is very effective for cuts and burns and scrapes. Is it the most effective? No. But it's one of the most effective. And then now we know how to create alchemy, right? Like we know we can take lavender and mix it with frankincense or tea tree or some of these other oils that really double click on all of those antibacterial, antimicrobial, antifungal properties. And we have so many options. Frankincense, Palo Santo, lavender. These are all very, very powerful medicinal oils. Yeah, it is really good for burns. My son got I always have lavender essential oil in my travel bag. You should always have it. If you don't use it all tonight, take this little dram that I've given you, cap it, and put it in your medicine bag or your makeup bag or in your travel bag. Because somewhere, somehow, you'll be somewhere and you're on vacation and the kids are making mac and cheese and they burn their finger and you'll have exactly the thing you need to treat it. Yeah, interesting, right? Okay, and then Orris, let's talk about Orris. See how she's cooking down here. How you doing? Oh, she's getting soft. I see you. I know. I wish there was a good one for COVID. Cold sores. I don't really have a good treatment for cold sores, do you guys? Essential aromatherapeutic treatment for cold sores. Yeah. Oh, I like that. Okay, Orris is from the root. Now, I got to tell you this really quickly because and you can find some fun videos of this online too, but I've learned this through friends of mine and through the distillery that provides us with our Orris. It's kind of like vetiver. And it sucks to harvest vetiver, just like it sucks to harvest ginger and it sucks to harvest Orris because you have to kill the entire crop, right? You're taking the root, you're not taking the flowers. So I have a huge vetiver plant in my yard. It's completely mature. I would love to harvest the vetiver roots from it. To do that, I have to kill the whole plant. I've actually thought about just replanting a new one and letting it grow up because it grows so fast that I have my big root ball because the root smells so good, right? But I mean, I have to kill the whole plant to do it. But so you're seeing some good recommendations in the feed, by the way, for cold sores. So thank you for that. So what they do, and they grow Orris in Corsica, in France, and in Italy. Corsica is part of France, but it's a particular region. So what they do is they grow these iris fields. Do you know iris flowers? I love them. The iris is associated with the divine feminine. The flower sort of looks like the JJ. So iris is thought as being a representation of the goddess. It's associated with Venus and beauty. And in fact, Orris is used in love spells. In the Hoodoo tradition, it's considered very powerful for love attraction. In the Wiccan tradition, it's considered very powerful for love attraction. Orris is, next to oud, the most expensive thing I bring you. It's more expensive than lotus. It's more expensive than plumeria, real plumeria. It's more expensive than honeysuckle. It's more expensive than jasmine. It's more expensive than rose, like by a mile. It's thousands of dollars a pound for pure Orris, and this is pure Orris that you have. But the reason you have a small bottle of it is if I was to double the size of this, I would have had to raise the price of the kit, and I didn't want to do that. Trying to find a warmer boob to kind of speed this up a little bit. Okay, so they grow these fields of iris. It is the rhizome. That's exactly it. So you're taking the root. They grow the fields of iris. They top the iris. They take the flowers and do what they will do with that. And then the particular iris is called the. I don't think I wrote it down. All iris roots are worked with for this purpose. It'll come to me. If there's one particular iris in particular, if you guys know the botanical Latin names and you say it, I will know which one it is. Palladium, it's either P-A-T-T or P-A-L-L. Armpit. Oh wait, fell out. I found my armpit now. It's either P-A-T-T or P-A-L-L. If you guys give me the botanical names, I'll tell you which one it is. Okay, so then what they do is they top the iris, they leave all of the bottoms and the roots in the ground for 3 to 5 years. This is why, Pallida. Thank you, Nancy Campbell. Pallida. Pallida is the genus name of the one. Yeah, not Germanica, Pallida. Okay, 3 to 5 years. So you plant iris, it blooms, you're not done. Now you have to leave the plant in the ground, baking under the sun, for the roots to develop. And then you harvest the roots. And they have this big machine that comes in, and it's got the sort of big rotating wheels with the spikes, and it comes in, and it goes exactly in to retrieve the root ball without damaging it. They estimate it's 7 years from the time you plant, on average 5 to 7, the time you plant the iris plant, and you can harvest the rhizome for Orris, and that's why it's so fucking expensive. But there's nothing like it, and the ancients have been using it for a really long time. Goes back to ancient Greece. The 3 points of the flower represent faith, wisdom, and courage in battle. Well, because it's the root, Nancy, so you want the root ball to develop. So if you take it out of the earth, obviously the roots, will not survive. So you have to leave the root ball in the earth. It's the same with vetiver. They top the vetiver. So if I was doing this, I would top my vetiver, I would leave it in the ground, and then I would harvest the root ball. Pretty nuts, isn't it? So it's distilled by retrieving that root ball and then putting that through the distillery, just like you would put the leaves and the branches of an orange tree, for example, to get petitgrain, right? So it's the same exact process, it's just you're putting the root ball through the distillery, through the machinery, yeah. Pretty crazy. So vetiver is harvested that way, like I said, Orris is harvested that way, anytime you're working with the roots instead of the leaves or the branches or the flowers. Number 19, Chanel. Interesting. I have not smelled that, but if it's got Orris in it, I know I would like it. I've never smelled anything with Orris that I didn't love. But it's not common. I mean, it is not a common ingredient, but in some of the big perfume houses, you will find it. It was used in particular in ancient times for moon ceremonies, lunar celebrations, new moon, full moon. It attracts love. In Italy, Orris roots became an integral part of the perfume history. They considered it to be an alternative for violet. It does have kind of a violety scent to it. When the root ball dries out, it's a very floral scent when the root ball is fresh. It gets powdery and more kind of sensual as the root ball dries, kind of like vetiver too, in that way. And was once really could only be afforded by royalty. In Hoodoo, they call it the Queen Elizabeth root, and it's said to ensnare and guarantee the love of someone in return for the earnest love of the one who is casting the spell. That's not my business. I don't like to manipulate people's free will, but if you're interested in doing that, Orris will help you. And then the last oil that we're working with, checking your armpit hair technique here, Nathan. Ooh, yeah, baby. Who knew my pits were so powerful? Okay, the last one. Oh, I spilled my neroli. Shit. Hold on. Trying not to spill one thing, and I end up spilling another, baby. I didn't spill too much, thank goodness. Oh, it smells so good. Maybe I'll just take this and put it in my underwear drawer or something. I hate it when I spill oils because I feel like I waste such precious things. Okay, neroli. Give it to me. Neroli is one of my favorite things on this planet. This is the distillation of the blossoms of the bitter orange tree. So good. It's my favorite. Isn't it yummy? So petitgrain, interestingly enough, so nothing of the orange tree is wasted in aromatherapy. Petitgrain is when they take the branches and the leaves and some of the rind of the orange tree and distill all of that so that you get petitgrain. Whereas this is just the pure orange blossoms. Isn't that magnificent? I love it so much too. I have met very few people in my life who really don't like orange blossom. Very, very few. Most people are like, I'm good with this. Every other oil has friends and foes, you know what I mean? But, woo. Honestly, Nancy, I've never blended neroli and blue lotus, but I would like to hear about it. That would be a really fun combination for me. Did you know it lowers blood pressure? This little neroli right here? That's actually widely discussed and documented. It reduces stress, it lowers blood pressure, and it helps to promote a healthy immune system, which is great. And that's what we're all thinking about right now. I have a lot of friends who are working with citrus essential oils right now because of COVID, because everybody's trying to really boost their immune system. It's not something I worry about because I have autoimmune disease, which means my immune system is overactive. But if you have kind of an underactive immune system, that can be helpful for you. It attracts money. Did you know that? If you put a little drop of neroli in your wallet, it's supposed to make your wallet get bigger magically. Encourages your capacity to overcome fears. It's helpful for lucid dreaming. It helps to ease insomnia. Lavender does too, by the way. Orris does too. So if you have trouble sleeping, this perfume we're making today might be one that you want to put on before you go to bed. Wouldn't that be nice? Let's see, I think that's everything. It's an aphrodisiac, so Orris is an aphrodisiac too. Lavender's not. I've never seen anybody get super horny from working with lavender. Have you? It's like, ooh, no. Lavender doesn't turn me on. It's beautiful, and it calms me down, but it doesn't turn me on. Let's see. It reduces inflammation. It's helpful for rheumatoid arthritis. There were researchers in Iran in 2015. They did a double-blind study using neroli oil to alleviate symptoms of rheumatoid arthritis. Isn't that interesting? And it was used to combat the plague, relieve fears, manage nervousness. The priestesses in Egypt also used it for ceremonial purposes. And lavender doesn't turn me on. A lot of things turn me on, but I don't know, lavender's like, I don't know. It's better blended. I think that's a beautiful way to put it. Okay, so let's get to blending. So we're gonna start with our base note. Because that's always how we do. And I always like to blow my breath into my bottle. You can do the little incense stick trick too if you want to cleanse and clear your bottle. You got a little baggie, if you recall, of some double terminated little tiny Herkimer diamonds. So I'm going to take mine, I'm going to make a wish that this blend will bring peace and health. And in she goes. We put double terms because they send and receive energy. Now I'm going big with my Orris, so I'm not going to measure. I just want it all in there. So that's 1 drop, 2 drop, 3, and then there it goes. I really want this to be an Orris blend. If you want to save some of your Orris, you can. But I'm probably putting, maybe I won't use all of it. What's a good amount? Waste not, want not, darling. Orris me up. Woo! Yeah, lavender does kind of remind me of grandma's, and grandma's don't turn me on. I mean, I love grandma's, but it's not hot. I hope to be a hot grandma one day, but okay. Now I want you to bring your Orris in your bottle with your neroli together to your nose, because I want you to decide how much neroli you want to add. I am going to put about half of what I have left in, because I also want this to be a neroli forward blend. You can use your dropper if you want, but I'm not being very scientific about it. And you don't have to be either. Now you need to kind of give that a go here and mix them, because that Orris will start to harden if it hasn't already. But the neroli will get in there and start to agitate it and make it a little bit more viscous, so it will blend. And once you get your alcohol in there too, you'll have a little bit of an easier go as well. If it gets too stuck, you can always put this in a cup, like you can boil water and then place this inside, you don't want to put water inside with this, but you can also warm the oils too if it's not blending well. I don't have that here to do this live, so I'm trying to mix the oils together, which is working. There we go. Okay, now I want you to smell those together. Oh, that's heavenly. See, a lot of you are grandmas, and you're hot grandmas and omas. Now lavender, I want you to bring the lavender to the bottle with the other two. And I want you to notice how it makes it pop. Top notes make it pop. That's why we have top notes. Middle notes and bottom notes are nice and thick and kind of resinous, and you know what I mean? But you need a top note to sharpen it and kind of pull them together. It's kind of like adding accessories to your outfit. Okay, it makes it pop. But you don't want too much. So I'm going to go drop by drop here, because this little lady is not going to screw up my perfume. Now I'm talking to you. I've seen what you can do, lavender. And we're not going to have that foolery here today. So I'm going to try 2 drops and a mix. And again, the more those oils live together, the more that will soften up for you. Oh, that might be it already. I'm going to do 1 to 2 more drops. Okay, I'm really happy with that. I'm going to do 1 more drop. So this will be 5. I'll do 2 more drops. I might be able to do 1 or 2 more. Yeah, this is it. What I'm doing is I'm trying to sharpen the neroli and the Orris without making this a lavender perfume. I don't want a lavender perfume. I also do want the metaphysical and the energetic properties of lavender, but I don't want to smell like lavender when I put this on. I'm going to do 2 more drops. But I really am this careful. I've just had too many bad experiences where I'm like, shit, now I have a lavender perfume and I didn't want that. And now I'm not happy about that. So, but this isn't happening this time, so I'm actually really happy with how this one is shaping up. This is really, really good. The lavender's doing its job here, but it's not overpowering, but just a little as you go. It's like adding salt to your dinner, right? It's like, ooh, can't take the salt out. And again, if you love lavender and you want this to be a lavender perfume, go for it. I mean, this is your perfume. That's why I gave you the ingredients and we're blending together, because ultimately you're going to be wearing this. That's interesting. I still think I need 1 or 2 more drops. Now I think am I at 12? Okay, I'm really happy with this. I'm really happy with this. Only 3 drops of Orris for Michelle. Isn't that nice? Yeah. Yeah, it got smoothed out. This is exactly what I hoped this perfume would smell like. You can tell there's lavender in it. I still think I need a little bit more. Interesting, interesting. I'm learning today. Part of it is this is a really nice lavender too. The Provence lavender is not like the Bulgarian or the Spanish or the Egyptian. It's not super sharp. Do you like it too? I don't like rosemary. There's almost no Sage Goddess perfume with rosemary in it. And I'll tell you something, that's not an accident. I don't like it. Rosemary is great for protection though. Yeah, whew. I'm telling you, I need more lavender. Isn't that interesting? I'm getting a little bit more bold. You add the alcohol to the top. I'm adding just a touch more. It's so funny to me. Like, normally it's not like me to add that. Actually, nope. See, it started to tilt. Interesting. Michelle Nacelle is kind of having a different experience, which is great. I mean, that you'll experience the notes differently, which is why I love teaching perfuming, because we're all going to look at this and blend something different. It's going to smell different on your skin than it'll smell on mine. Okay, this is perfect. This is perfect. But if I added one more drop, it would be too much. Do you have that? Yeah, I know. Donna Simpson's Baby Yoda got a neroli bath. Baby Yoda wasn't complaining about that. Okay, now last but not least, and I have a feeling I'm going to have to do a warming of mine to finish blending it, and you may have to as well. It depends on how well, how warm your Orris was for blending. Okay, so this is your ethanol alcohol. So the last step is you want to add, I'm going to use my pipette. You want to fill your perfume bottle to the top with the alcohol. And depending on how many oils you added and how much of the oils you added, it'll be a different amount of alcohol for you, potentially, than it is for me. Now you don't want to overfill this bottle, because when you put your atomizer in, you don't want it to overflow. Can you guys see? It's really pretty, actually, isn't it? I love this bottle so much. I hope you love it too. We were really excited about the bottles for this class, and frankly really surprised that we could get all these things during a pandemic. I was very proud of our ability to source some special things, because this year's been really hard for that. Okay, I'm going to stop it there. I'm going to put my atomizer in just to make sure it's not overflowing, and twist it tight. And you'll want to mix, and like I said, you may have to, I have a feeling for mine I'm going to have to, what I will do is take a mug of hot water and then sit the bottle in it, which will warm the perfume, and that will allow for a final blending. Also, if you just let it sit for a little while, it will eventually, especially if you kind of twist and turn, it will eventually, do you see how mine's blending already? But you can also warm it. Not directly, don't put this in a microwave or anything like that, but almost like a double boiler situation will also help to blend your oils. But that alcohol is a really nice medium for mixing your essential oils. So if you work with it a little bit, it will start to come together. And that, my darlings, is a true artisan French alcohol-based perfume, and it will come together perfectly for you. I wanted to tell you something that's really cool about Orris that I forgot to mention. Did you know, I'm going to spray it for the first time in a minute, but I'm just mixing it. Did you know Orris is a natural fixative? Do you know what a fixative is? So the way that the department store perfumes make your perfumes really strong and last for a long time is they put chemical fixatives in there, so that you go, well, this perfume lasts such a long time. But what the real perfumers know is that some oils are natural fixatives, so you don't have to use the chemicals. Orris is one of the most powerful natural fixatives in the plant and mineral world. So is vetiver, so is ginger. Anything you distill from the root is a natural fixative. So this is going to last a long time on you with no chemicals. Isn't that fun? Okay, I'm ready for my inaugural spray. I gotta think of a name for it too. What would you call this? Are you thinking of a name? Yeah, so Donna Simpson, did you sort it out? You just add enough alcohol to get to the top of the bottle. It's not scientific. And Angel's so excited. I'm so excited for you. Okay, ready? There we go. And you gotta pump it to get it going. Give you a good mist here, baby. She's getting going there. There we go. Oh my Lord. Woo! Woo! So Donna, just to the top. You just add with your pipette till you get to right about here on the bottle, okay? Which for you could be a little bit different. I'm like spraying it around my room. It's so yummy, oh my goddess. And you can add more oils and more alcohol to keep this bottle full, okay? So as you wear this down, I still have a little bit of all of my oils left. You actually have enough oils, do you guys realize it, to almost refill this again. And that's the other beauty of making your own perfume, is that you can almost remake this, the whole thing, with just the ingredients that you have. You also have other oils from your other kits. You could go and add in some of your Blue Lotus from our Egyptian blend. See what that does to it if you want to, right? You're calling it Fleur. Fleur is kind of the perfect name. I saw someone else say amour or l'amour, which is French for love. It feels like an amour, wouldn't it? I have to say, this is one of my favoriteest things that we have done at Sage Goddess, is making this perfume. This is 3,000%, and those of you who either live in the UK or France, or you have been to these perfume houses, wouldn't you say that you would walk into one of those stores and smell something like this? I think you would, 3,000%. And what's nice about it too is the Orris gives you that really dark color. You know what I mean? A lot of times when you're not dealing with natural perfumes, they're just clear. You know what I mean? Because a lot of it's chemicals. But when you have something natural in there that's a fixative like that and super, super dark. If you spilled your neroli, we might have some more that we can send you a little extra bottle. You'd have to check with Alexis, and she would have to check with the team. You can find relatively good neroli on Amazon too, but we can always check with the team and see if we have one we can send you. I just don't know, so I can't guarantee. La magie. I like that too. A little bit of magics. A lot of magics. And so, I'm going to do it with my cap. Oh Lord, it's here somewhere. I'll find it as soon as I stop looking for it. Anyway. That, my friends, is Perfume Around the World Part 2, Tour de France. Your atomizer isn't working, really? Yeah, you may want to, if it gets clogged, Jenny added the same thing, run it under some warm water. Take it off your bottle, run it under some warm water. Or what I do if my atomizers on my perfume bottles clog, this might sound funny, take a little bottle of rubbing alcohol, okay, and put the atomizer in it and spray until the rubbing alcohol comes out. That'll clean it, okay, and then put it back on your bottle. If it gets a little clogged, that always works. That's my little trick with the rubbing alcohol. But Ginny's tip of the warm water is also excellent. And that's not just for this atomizer, that's for any atomizer, because sometimes my other atomizers get stuck too. Rubbing alcohol, warm water will clear all that up for you. No, you only have to put it in warm water to blend it all together one time, and then it will stay blended. That's only if your Orris is hard. Once everything's blended in alcohol, it will stay blended forever. You only have to do that the first time. Isn't it fun? Do you like it? Thank you for that, Nathan. Well, I have to say, teaching you guys this class is one of my favorite things of this whole year. I love talking about perfumery. I love talking about oils. I'm a little bit obsessed. I mean, a lot of what I taught you tonight is just sort of fast facts that I've gleaned over the years, because Like I just love talking to people who know a lot about this, and it's part of my, my favorite hobbies. So thank you for letting me geek out and share my wisdom and my knowledge with you. I really hope that you enjoyed it. It went by really fast too, didn't it? Um, so yeah, Chris Ann, if your sprayer isn't working, did you hear what we were just talking about with the warm water or rubbing alcohol? If your atomizer gets stuck. So if you missed that, just go back to what I was just talking about. You can go back with the recording and just follow those quick tips and suggestions. Yeah. Super, super cool. Vive la France. I'm so glad you guys enjoyed it. So thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. I'm so glad I could be here this week and that everything went well. Thank you for your kind thoughts and prayers. Thank you, Alexis, as always, for being there. And so there will be notes for you coming. So hopefully you didn't take any notes. If you didn't want to, we will provide that to you. And as always, the recording is there in perpetuity for you. So if you want to go back and watch any part of this again, you have lifetime access to that. I don't know if there's going to be a part 2 to Perfume Around the World. Some people have really been excited about it, but some people do not want it to be part of next year's program. There'll be a little bit of something to do with oils in my programs because there always is. But maybe I'll do a little part 2 next summer or something like that if people are interested in looking at more countries, because there's a lot more to cover than we're doing this year. I just chose kind of the 3 most famous because Indonesia is where we go into clove and champaka and patchouli, you know what I mean? Like there's so much rich history and magic in Indonesia, and Egypt is obvious, and then France is kind of obvious too. So we'll see. Somehow I'll be weaving oils into my curriculum next year. I'm just not totally sure how we're doing that just yet, so stay tuned. But thank you for saying that you would like it because I really appreciate it. I'm glad that you guys are enjoying the experience. So Alexis will help you out with the technical bits and bobs of where to find your notes. She's so good about that. And so let me remind you real quickly, as a fun little giveaway, because we talked about House Caron, which was one of the French perfume houses that was established, how many years ago now? Caron was 1904, so that's 120, almost 120 years ago. So this is a vintage Caron, authentic Caron perfume bottle. It's worth about $150 on its own. I'm going to be making one of you a custom perfume. So if you shop at sagegoddess.com before Sunday at midnight and you put France in your notes, you're going to enter to win a custom perfume. There's no minimum purchase. We're also giving you 21% off the whole shop right now with code 21LOVE at sagegoddess.com. So if there's any perfumes you've been wanting or any crystals or tools, then be sure to put France in your notes. One of you is going to win this, and then I'm going to make you your own custom perfume. And you can either give me a theme and I'll build it, or you can give me a list of ingredients and I'll make it. This one should probably be an oil-based perfume, but if you really want alcohol or ethanol-based, I'll do that for you too. Isn't that exciting? So, and I'll keep you posted. I'll let you know on Monday on the event page who won. And then if they give me permission, I'll let you know what kind of blend they wanted and keep you posted. I'll post a little picture of it when it's done. So good luck, everybody. So you don't have to shop today. Today's Thursday, so you can shop today, tomorrow, Saturday, or Sunday. But you got to put France in your notes. It's okay if you say French or France, like we know what you're talking about. Just, you have to put something like that, because then what they do is they take your order and they separate it for me. And then I only go through those orders to choose a winner. So good luck and happy shopping. 21LOVE is your code. And then when you shop this week, you're also entering to win that big fall altar that has my huge orange labradorite sphere on it. You get the whole altar. It's worth $1,500. So good luck. We've got some really exciting things happening. But the giveaway perfume is only for you guys. Your chances are really good. It's only for the people who are watching this class. There's 185 of you right now. Usually when I do a giveaway, there's thousands and thousands and thousands of people. So your chances are really good. Don't tell anybody to put France in their notes. They have to learn it here, so it stays here. But I want somebody to win it who's gonna love it. I only have one of these bottles. These are actually really hard to find, these vintage Caron perfume bottles, and I only have one. And I would never give it away to someone who didn't love perfume, because they wouldn't appreciate it as much as you guys will appreciate it. So anyway, enjoy. And hopefully that'll be something you love and you'll keep it on your vanity and always remember your perfuming class time. So good luck. I'm crossing my fingers for you. Have a great rest of your evening, you guys. If you're in Crystal Masters, I'll see you tomorrow afternoon. We have Rare Stone Roundup in the afternoon. I'm really excited about that. What else? I think that's it. I'll be live with you at lunchtime tomorrow, as I am each day, to show you what's happening at sagegoddess.com, and then I'll see you over the weekend as well. Looking forward to that. All right, you guys, have a great rest of your evening, and thank you for being here. I'm so glad you enjoyed it. I know you smell good. And you've got aphrodisiacs in there too. I'm not responsible for what happens to you this evening. I'll see you soon. Take care.